Hey everybody, welcome to a Vectortuts Plus video tutorial. Today we're going to be tackling how to create realistic vector bubbles. I'm Ryan Quintal, and I'm going to be walking you through this pretty cool intermediate level tutorial. So let's fire up Illustrator and get started. First we're going to create a new web document. 1000 by 1000 pixels, we can call this bubble. Once you have your document open, it's time to start setting up and getting ready for our bubble. The first thing we want to do right off the bat is create some new layers. Layer 1 we're going to rename to background or BG. Layer 2 is probably our most important. We're going to call that bubble. We want to choose a neutral color for this. So let's do something like how about just a flat out gray? That'll be perfect because we're going to add a lot of color to this layer. And then finally our last layer, you can name it polish, effects, just pretty much anything you like. You can hit OK on that. Now select your background layer, come up to the rectangle tool and click in a corner of your document. We're going to make a 1000 by 1000 rectangle. Once you have that all set up, you can center it using the tools and then lock that layer down. That's all we need to do for our background layer for now. Next, it's time to go on to our bubble layer. So you're going to want to grab your ellipse tool, select the bubble layer, and let's pick black for our color here. And you'll want to zero out the stroke so no stroke is being applied. Then you can Alt, Shift, and click and drag, and you see that'll make a circle on your canvas. Zoom in so you get a better look. And then you can use the tools at the top again to center this so you're working pretty much symmetrically on your canvas. So we're going to set this up in 3 sections. The first will be our outer shines and glows. That's going to become gradient meshes. The second one is going to be the inner shines or reflections, and we'll set those up in a different color. And then finally we're going to do the more complex reflection that involves a circle in the middle of the bubble. So we'll start here and we're going to grab a pen tool. And we're going to bubble right along the bottom of this. We're going to choose green as our color. Complete that path. Then we're also going to do 2 side bubbles. So we're going to come in, give that there. And we're also going to do one right across the edge here. And you can see I'm just sort of making the edges haphazard. We're also going to do some curves on each side. So around there is good. We'll do one across the top as well. Maybe a little bit more like that. And one on the edge. So like that. And now you're probably thinking, hey Ryan, this doesn't look a whole lot like a bubble. Well, I'm going to now teach you something that I like to call the double tap. And no, this isn't Zombieland, but I like it all the same. It's still a lot of fun. The double tap is basically a combination of the Pathfinder, a keyboard shortcut, and the arrow keys on your keyboard. We're going to use it to clean up all the edges that we just made. We're going to select the black circle that's underneath. That's the edge we want. We're going to hold down Alt on our keyboards and tap the right arrow once while you're holding Alt. Then let go of the Alt button on your keyboard. You'll see your cursor change back. And tap left once on your keyboard. Now what we just did is we made an exact circle. We copied it 1 space to the right and then moved that copy 1 space back to the left, effectively making an identical copy of the circle. Now, if you don't have your Pathfinder shown, go up to Window and select Pathfinder. You can see that's also Shift, Control, F9. Hold down Shift and select your copied circle and one of your edges. Now with the Pathfinder, we can use the intersect command, and you can see cleans right up the edge, and that is the double tap, that Alt tap tap. And we're going to do it a couple more times so you get used to it when I refer to it. Click on the circle, Alt, right, let go, left, select your second thing with it, with Shift, and then intersect. So Alt, tap, tap, Shift select, intersect. So that's it. That's the double tap. And you can probably hear it on my keyboard. Tap, tap. Select, intersect, and you can see that that has just a really easy, really clean result. Tap, tap. And there's our bottom one, and all of our edges are done. Now, this is a little symmetrical, so I'm probably going to take this and rotate it to the side a bit. That looks about good. And now you're going to get your magic wand palette out. If you don't have it, you can double click on your magic wand. And you can see I want to select fill color and stroke color. That'll be important for later. Select all of our green, and we're going to switch it around so it's only outlines. Now that we've got our green all taken care of, it's time to start doing our inner shapes. Those we're going to pick a drastically different color. How about pink? And these next two shapes are sort of bull horns or spikes or whatever you want to call them. And they basically start thick at one side and then come up and curve up the bubble, like we're seeing here. And you can switch it around if you want to see sort of the space that they take up. That's pretty good. You can hold down Alt and drag and make a second copy. We're going to put that here so it's sort of a yin-yang bubble effect. And you can adjust these and rotate them to really fit what you think looks right. Once you have those nailed down, turn those back into outlines, and we're going to work on the center. The center is going to be a circle. We're going to make this light blue on the edge. I'm going to Alt-Shift drag and make a big circle. That's pretty good. And then I'm going to make a copy of that. Just copy and paste it. And this one will be smaller. We'll do it dark blue so we can see the difference. And it's not quite centered, so you notice each of these circles, this light blue circle isn't centered in the whole bubble, and then this blue circle isn't centered in the light blue circle. So you have sort of this unevenness shine about it, but it creates kind of a nice effect in the finished look. Now we're going to get to probably the most complicated of all the shines, which is these zigzagged sort of wrapping type of shines. And here's how we're going to do that. Let's select our black circle, and we're going to double tap it, Alt, tap, tap, and we're going to bring this to the front. So let's right click, arrange, and bring to front. We're also going to color this orange so we make no mistake as to which property this is. And to see underneath, we're going to turn it down to 70% opacity. Now, with the pen tool, you want to basically make zigzags across the top and bottom of this. Select the pen tool, and for the top zigzag, we're going to start down, and we're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, and then use your color palette to come and make it a path. You can see I hit the circle a little bit, so you want to adjust that point for point with your direct selection tool so it's not touching the circle. That's a little bit better. Then we're going to make the same thing at the bottom. This one will be smaller. So if we went up, down, up, down, up, down, we're going to go down, up, down, up, down, up to end it. Now we can select both of our zigzags and the circle, and that's just holding down Shift to select all of those. And we're going to hit the divide button in the Pathfinder. The Pathfinder is your friend throughout this. Then with our direct selection, select the middle and just hit delete, and what you have is, well, it kind of looks like an angry Pac-Man, quite frankly. So now we're going to smooth out these edges and get them sort of looking more like a shine or a reflection. And you can do that by selecting these direct select points with Shift, clicking, and then up here in your anchor points palette, convert them to smooth edges. And do that same thing to your bottom three. Just the inside ones, the points you can leave near the circle. And then you want to go around and manually adjust these so that they wrap better and they look a little bit smoother. You can see here I'm taking and dragging out these very faint anchor points, and this is why I'll zoom in a little bit for you so you can see it. This is why we picked gray, because if it were black we'd sort of have a hard time seeing where the points were, and if it were another color, say blue or something, we would confuse it with one of our outlines for the circle. So this is all sort of just a manual process. And if you'd like to, you can hit Control Y on your keyboard or Command Y on your Mac and see these points sort of more adjusted in black and white. Control Y again will return you to your normal view. Once those are where you want them, you can right click and ungroup them. Then you can move them up in your bubble, size them down a little bit. You can also turn their opacity all the way back up and convert those just to outlines. So once you've hit this point, you're ready to move on to what is step 8 in the written tutorial, where we're going to be making these gradients and gradient meshes to create that shiny reflective look. So let's select our black circle that was the foundation of this whole bubble and reflection to begin with, and we're going to store it sort of for later. So in our layers palette, you can see here you can grab a gray square, the color we selected for the layer, and drag it up to the effects layer. Then we're going to hide the effects layer by clicking on the eye and just sort of do out of sight, out of mind on it for now. Now all of these are going to be a pretty similar type of gradient. So you can use your magic wand, and remember earlier we selected stroke color, so now we can grab each of these elements, our pinks, our oranges, each blue separately, and our greens, and we can give those all different gradients and the same gradient. And now our segmentation by color is going to make a lot of sense because each of these is going to have different level of emphasis on each one. Let's select our two inner blues, and those are going to be our most faint gradients. You can select the black and white gradient right from the swatches menu, or you can make one in the gradient palette. Here, we're going to change our transparency mode to screen, and we're going to change down the opacity all the way down to, say, 10%. Something really, really faint. Once you've got that down to 10%, the next level of emphasis I want to have is our two oranges. Let's use the magic wand and grab one of the oranges, and you can see it selects them both. We'll use our same black and white, and this time, while the top one is going to be a left to right gradient, and I'm doing that with the gradient tool, the bottom one will be a right to left type of gradient. And you can see here that the gradients you want to give these, you don't want to let them go all the way to black, or else the path will disappear completely on you. But you do want to let it get pretty dark. Once you have those two, set their transparency mode to screen, and you can bring that down to, say, 30% opacity. Now we have our two pink fangs. So for our two pinks, let's pick the black and white. And these we do want to fade at the bottom because that's a really hard edge. So we're going to drag it top to bottom and let them get right black at the bottom. We'll do the same thing with this one. Yeah, that's good. We'll also put these in screen mode, and these can go down to, say, 40%. Now let's take care of the gradient mesh portion of this by selecting all of our greens and filling them with very dark gray. That's right, very dark gray, and very dark gray for a reason. We want these to still have an edge. We're going to right-click, arrange, and bring these to the front. And now we're going to start using the gradient mesh tool to strategically position our shines on this so that they look even and circular. So let's deselect everything. We're going to grab our gradient mesh tool, and we're going to pick white from the swatches menu because it's a white shine we're going to be putting on these. And then you watch me click in just single locations. And these single locations are representative of that circular type of effect that we want to have. Now we can select our gradient meshes here, put those into screen mode, and turn those down to, say, 40% opacity. So now we have a pretty good sense of roundness to all of this. We want to also make sure we select everything at this point and take the stroke color and set it to nothing, because we don't really want any stroke on this bubble. And we've got the foundation of our bubble done. Great job. Now it's time to open up our effects layer and really start getting into some polish on this thing. Let's lock down our bubble layer and show the effects layer. Our black circle's back, remember him? Great. We're going to select this circle and we're going to offset it a little bit so we give this thing a little bit of an edge. Let's go to Object, Path, and we're going to offset the path, and let's do it by, how about -5 pixels. If you want to see a preview of that, check it off, and you can see it's making a little ring around our entire bubble. You can hit OK. And we're going to use the exclude command in the Pathfinder. And you can see that just makes it a thin black ring around the whole bubble. Now in our gradient palette, we're going to click once in there. Once it's a gradient, we're going to make a new gradient here that just has black and white sort of interspersed in it, and give it sort of an uneven effect, and you can see what that looks like here. I'm also going to take this and set that to screen mode. And I'm actually going to leave that right at 100%. That gives the bubble a really defined edge. And then I'm going to start to add in some additional shines here. And I'm going to just make those white circles. And this is all sort of part of step 10 in the tutorial, where it says, you know, use your own artistic sense and your own design sense to sort of feel what you like, what you don't like, and make that part of the bubble itself. So I'm going to make 3 of these. This one will be a little longer. And then I'm actually going to go grab the warp tool and make it pretty big, say 250 by 250, and cut down that intensity to, say, 30. And just go and push these sort of in line with where they should be on the bubble. You gotta select one and then start warping it. And I do select each one at a time. That way, if they get close to each other, the warp tool's pretty big right now, so I don't want them really touching each other. And this guy up here, I'll use and I'll warp him a little bit wider. Bring him down a little bit. And with these 3 sort of oblong shapes, you can come select them all, give them the effect of a blur, Gaussian blur. We'll do 5 pixels. That's about good. Position them now so they butt up right against the edges. And then you can actually give them gradients. So with all 3 selected, pick that plain old gradient in the swatches palette again, and put them onto screen mode. And you can see here, you get that pretty nice effect that we've had throughout this. It's just some extra soft edges on this bubble that I thought looked a little bit nice. I'll even take those down to 60% so they're not overwhelming anything. In the tutorial, they also did 2 additional fangs, thinner ones, inside each of the already existing, which looks pretty cool, so I think we should do it too. Alt-click and expand these, put those in the screen mode. It's pretty neat looking. We'll take those down to, say, 60%. So now we have this pretty cool vector bubble. You can unlock your bubble layer and actually select everything and drag it down to the bubble layer. So once this is all down into the bubble layer and collapsed, I group it just for organizational type of purposes. This is all one thing and a lot easier to deal with. Now we're going to start setting this up so it looks a little bit more graphically interesting. This is the artsy-fartsy portion of it, if you like. We're going to add in some shiny star effects, and we're going to make the background look a little bit more interesting. So the first thing we're going to do is start off by making some flares, some stars, and not the Illustrator default lens flares. We're going to make these by hand. Alright, so now we're going to make a triangle here, a really thin triangle in Illustrator. And notice to make the straight lines, I'm shift-clicking if you didn't know that already. Make it really pointy, that looks good. And we want this lighting up from the inside, so let's change our gradient to be white to black. That's a lot better. Now we're going to select that and go to Effects, Distort and Transform, and we're going to transform it. We want these at 90-degree angles. We're going to make 3 copies of it. And then let's hit preview here, and you can see this isn't quite exactly what I'm looking for. You may have to go negative and move these things around here. What I found typically worked for me was 90 and 90, specifically negative 90 by negative 90. I hit OK, and then since this is just an effect, I want to make it real, so I go to Object Expand Appearance. Now you see here that that made 4 of this object. I'm going to set that to screen mode, and that looks like the type of star that I wanted. Now we're going to do our patented double tap. Alt, right, left, and we're going to shrink this a little bit. I'm holding down Alt so it shrinks on all angles. And holding down Shift, I'm going to rotate it once by 45 degrees, and now we have this cool little vector star. Here you can group this, and you can position it pretty much wherever you like. Obviously be tasteful with your size, that's a bit too large. And I believe that there was a few of these bubbles made in the tutorial. So I'll put a second one down here. And you can even rotate these for a sense of variety. There's a third one, a little small one. Right around there where we did it at the bottom. So that's pretty decent. That is looking more and more like our finished product and what we want. Now we're going to lock all of that and make our background funky. So unlock your background layer, select it once, and we're going to use the gradient mesh tool here again. We're just going to make 2 clicks. So so we're going to make one on the sort of top right side of the bubble. We'll make one on the bottom left side of the bubble, cutting it into 4 quadrants. And then you can use the direct select tool and make these different. And I think here they had a bit of a shine on the left hand side. In fact, let's make that a lot more pronounced. And then towards the bottom here, the quadrants certainly got darker. So now our background is holding some interest as well. Now we're going to come back and lock our background layer, unlock our effects layer, and we're going to get ready to do our finishing touches here. This next part of the tutorial was really cool and totally blew me away. It was a great idea for flares of light in Illustrator, so check this part out. What we're going to do is make our same spikes or bullhorns that we've been making this whole time on our bubble. Only you're going to go off the reservation a little bit. And then when you come back, give that a nice round and sort of match the contour of the circle. And we're going to do the same thing for the bottom. The bottom one will start thin on the same side that the top one started thin. It should come around and match our bubble as best as possible. But be a fair amount thinner than the top. So once you have these done, we're going to do something pretty cool. Check this out. We're going to select them both and make them a gradient. And this is going to be a black, white, black gradient, so you just have a shine of white in the middle. With them both selected, you can give them the exact same shine. And here is a really fun thing. On the top, instead of white, you want to give this sort of a cyan type of blue. Really strong color. And on the bottom, you want to do a magenta type of color. That pink's pretty cool. I'm going to bring a little less blue into it. So these two electric sort of neon colors. And for each of them, you're going to go to Effect, Blur, and you're going to give these a radial blur. Now the settings for the radial blur are sort of up to you. The tutorial says 26, spin, method, and good quality. You can sort of see what that's doing there. You can select the other one and just do apply the radial blur from the effects palette. And then with each of these, you can select them both and set them to color dodge transparency mode. And you can see it sort of lights up the entire bubble in a really cool way, and position those as you see fit. And I took them down to about 75% opacity so that they didn't overwhelm too much. Even the top's a little bright, so you can manually adjust that. So I landed at about 57-60% on that. Then finally, it's pretty much all said and done. You can take these bubbles, unlock your bubbles layer, and lock down the effects layer. And you can drag them out and rotate them and place them and have all sorts of fun with them. In fact, I like this bubble so much, I ended up making a copy of the big one, shrinking it down to be pretty small. Go into your symbols palette, make this a symbol, save it forever, and call it Bubble. And then with your symbol sprayer tool, you can come in and just pepper these into your scene, scattered randomly about, and it's really cool. And you can use all the symbol tools to make that nice and easy for you. You can do the sizer and make them bigger or smaller, however you want to do it. And you can even use the symbol rotate tool, which is the symbol spinner, and get these going in different directions and make it really fun. But that is it. That is how to make a realistic vector bubble in Adobe Illustrator. I hope you had a lot of fun and enjoyed it. Keep designing.